What are we doing with our lives? Especially when there are no eyes to watch us, no cameras to capture any frames. How much good have we done to life? How are we living life? For whom? How are we filling up our days with our continued desires that will never be fulfilled, or with personal goals that leave no room for anomalies to occur, or from including others and their needs into the mix? How wide is the heart's door open? We often talk about craving. But we need to remember that craving is the other side of suffering. In fact, it is suffering. With the absence of one, the other is no more. In fact, there's no time delay between having craving that turns into suffering or discontent, as they are one and the same. So, in essence, letting go of craving also means becoming reacquainted with life by saying yes to situations that call upon us to touch life with genuineness, with authenticity in this very inauthentic time period in human history. Like touching life, we do it by tapping into our hearts to become kind first to ourselves, kind to others, to complete strangers in desperate situations, in need of feeling that they are not alone. They're not abandoned by life, by people, by humanity. Instead, that there is this conspiring willingness to put some wholesome cheer into another's life. But living such a life, such a colorful, fresh life that is with courage requires us to live, in essence, a noble life. Noble life. But a noble life also means that it is a kind of life that is safe. Safe from engaging with staying away from, basically, individuals that are on the opposite pole of a noble life, meaning lowborns. Those individuals that do not hold up to the same ideals and principles are absolute mandatory things to have in one's life, according to this path, according to the Buddha's path of walking away from suffering and into a state of calm, contentedness, happiness, joy, with wisdom, with open hands, with generosity, with kindness, with selflessness, but again with wisdom. to choose as to who we engage with. What kind of situations do we elect for ourselves? Sometimes people ask, through the practice, they come to purify themselves more and more and more. Purify in the sense that they don't continue on this habitual pattern of doing things, saying things, behaving in ways, thinking in ways that bring about more states of angst and suffering. In that sense, they're becoming more and more pure. However, on the other hand, they are afraid of letting go of certain characters, certain associations, certain individuals in their lives. Hence, the need for courage to ask the question, okay, do I want to live an inferior type of life or a superior kind of life? Superior not to others, other human beings, but superior to the kind of life that we ourselves have been living up to that point. The Buddha used the words kusala and akusala, skillful or wholesome, and unskillful, unwholesome. We become the gauge for that. The quality, the quotient of happiness in our lives becomes the gauge for that, whether it is wholesome or not. And then one's allegiance becomes that needs to be towards the Dhamma. That is knowing the difference between inferior and superior. And that's another way of protecting ourselves. We need to protect ourselves, which requires courage. Instead of being victims to our own three defilements of greed, hatred, and delusion. No amount of degrees, no amount of prestige, no amount of social status will ever, ever, ever be enough to cover for these lack within us of greed, hatred, and delusion. They will still remain to be these huge, huge gaping holes of unhappiness that can never be filled by anything we engage in. And often it is our ceaseless stream of desires that makes us suffer in life and toil, simply because we're trying to fulfill this need to feel complete. But because everything is already impermanent, soon enough there will be another hole that needs to be filled, and so on and so forth ad infinitum. And no one is going to live your life for you. No one is going to definitely live your life wisely for you. And no one is going to keep holding your hand for you for the rest of your life. Hence, the responsibility befalls upon our shoulders. So it's all about the practice. We need to learn what is the right path from the wrong, and then make a choice and move in that direction. Always testing it with the quotient of happiness in our lives. If there's tension, if there's suffering, basically, it's a clear sign. Remember, suffering and craving are one and the same thing. They happen immediately. So in order for the practice to be authentic and real, we need to add this sense of immediacy to life. Instead of chewing on yesterday's rubbish, memories, garbage of what he said, what she said, what he did, what she did. What would we do if our hair was on fire? That's the immediacy we're talking about. There's no time delay. So we need to not waste time and just jump right in and remove the arrows, the poisonous arrows of defilements from us, from our mind, from our hang-ups, because old age, sickness, and death are right around the corner. In fact, death is more guaranteed than the other two. It's there. It's there. It's coming. We don't know when, but it's coming. Guaranteed. And by the way, it's also coming after your loved ones. Guaranteed. And everything you hold valuable. Hence the need for us to apply the understanding of what is going on, which entails a level of comprehension, of wisdom, to see that every day lived without the Dhamma is a day lived recklessly. It's gambling away our lives, unsure of the next second as to what it would bring, but somehow believing that it would be there. Somehow, as we waste yet another day lived out completely unmindfully, mindlessly, while remaining pretty much at the mercy of whatever's coming through the sixth sense doors. They're always keeping us distracted. Always. So there's always something coming up. And if that's not bringing in any new information, the mind is always there, which is part of the sixth sense doors. And the memories are rampant. They're always there. Hence the chewing on yesterday's garbage. So the meditative practice is all about living a truthful life that is engaged. It's not separate from who you are. Your meditative practice is very much part and parcel of who we are as individuals, how we behave when we're not sitting. So whatever attainments, whatever experiences one might experience in meditation, ultimately are not important at all. Ultimately, because I mentioned this recently, the proof is in the pudding of one's kindness towards the world around us. And whether there's humanity in us. Do we rise up to the occasion, as it were? Within uncomfortable situations, when there's no cameras rolling, when there are no people, maybe just you and the other person who needs a helping hand. Otherwise, all this meditation business is just another venture out into ego land. Just another stripe, another badge to talk about at parties, to friends, to yourself. Utterly meaningless, pointless, a waste of time. So this practice that we do is not about living an uninvolved life, a disconnected way of living from life. It is about understanding as to why we're suffering and learning something from that while we're taking the necessary steps to move away from whatever it is that are the conditions that are causing us to suffer, and then helping out someone else. That's another form of generosity. Generosity isn't just to give money or whatever. Generosity is to give of oneself. And sometimes you don't even have to do or say anything. Just living your life in a noble way is sufficient enough, is enough to demonstrate, to create a different type of atmosphere wherever you might be. The people that you associate with suddenly become more in tune with something that is not so mundane. That is you bringing meditation to life in a dynamic, very engaged manner by remaining human, by showing your humanity with a clear mind, without losing your cool, if you will. The Buddha says, even in the most difficult vicissitudes of life, to remain sorrowless, stainless, safe, pure, that is the highest blessing. But in order for us to do that, we need to establish ourselves very strongly, foundationally on the precepts. There isn't an, sometime I keep precepts business. There's no such thing. So we need to be firmly established in keeping the precepts. Otherwise, we're just going back and forth and we never actually make any headway. It's like taking 2 steps forward, but taking 3 steps back. We just wasted a lot of valuable energy. Might as well not even have spent that energy in that way. Go and do something else with your life. So establishing oneself in high morals and virtuous character is extremely important in this practice. Then choosing to be true to oneself and using the litmus test of your own experiences and how the outcome was from each of these experiences based on your choices. Have these choices been made with a clear mind, with as little as possible involvement from the 3 defilements? Allows us to start living for something that is beyond the conditions of the habitual life we have thus lived all this time. It's easy to talk about the Dhamma and use a lot of terminology, especially if one is familiar with them, at least. Hopefully they are. But it's easy to talk about principles and breakdowns. And sometimes people have talked about the Abhidhamma, Visuddhimagga, things like this. And to me, they are actually good doorstops because they do not help the person bring out their humanity. They have a higher potential, in fact, to make the person become more egotistical, self-centered, add more badges, while death is coming around the corner and the hair is on fire and there's tremendous amount of suffering in the heart and mind. And we don't suffer by ourselves. We suffer along with everyone else. If we're suffering, others are also suffering because of us, with us, and vice versa. This path of the Buddha is all about putting an end to that. Putting an end to that. And that's what I come back to refer to the individual responsibility. If one individual from society decides to, you know what, I will live the noble life versus the inferior life, already we are creating a different resonance in the fabric of humanity. It's the best way to change the way things are going, to my understanding, to my experience. Now, this takes a lot of guts, a lot of resiliency, a lot of patience, a lot of wisdom and kindness, a lot of strength. It's the most courageous thing you could do. The Buddha said you can conquer 1,000 times, 1,000 armies, 1,000 times over, but that cannot even equate to 1/16 of what you could do if you're able to, even briefly, control the habitual patterns of the mind, meaning the three defilements, and choose the noble path, the higher path, versus the low-born path, which almost 7.7 billion of us are choosing every single day. So responsible living is what the Buddha taught us. And that's the invitation that I am trying to make here to every one of us, to see if we can do it. And of course, it's in our hands to do it. Baby steps. In Italian, they say piano, piano. Slowly, slowly, but surely. So I will stop here and open up to any comments, questions, thoughts you have to share. Anyone? Or perhaps I can add another thought that I just had earlier. And this involves speaking with hatred. And the image I got was of when we speak with hatred about someone, including if it's about ourselves, and we often do that, mentally at least. So speaking negatively or with hatred, it's like trying to speak with sharp shards of glass in your mouth. What an image that is. Broken shards of glass in one's mouth. Can we develop the immediacy to just like cough that thing out of our mouth while we have the desire to barrage this individual, these people? And obviously, when we have that tendency, the drive, the desire to really go ahead and say whatever nasty thing that comes to mind about them, in that moment, can we stop in mid-sentence, as it were, and just expel it out of our mouth? Because the image itself, broken pieces of glass, shards of glass, is painful. It's bleeding. The mouth is bleeding. And what I'm referring to is the sense of remorse that one will feel, and also the negative impact that it definitely will have on the mind, the quality of the mind. Because we cannot speak harshly or negatively, gossip basically, with a tranquil mind. And this is another reason why a lot of meditators have a difficulty to attain to that tranquility in the mind. Because they have such negative attitudes towards themselves first. Their upbringing, the pointing the finger at this or that. You are the reason why I'm unhappy. You took away something. You. And oftentimes that you turns on themselves as well. Painful. Painful. Whichever way you cut it, it's painful. And to be explained that this is what's happening, that's another added layer of pain for these individuals. Hence the need for us to practice the Eightfold Path. Specifically, harmonious communication, right speech. Is this taking away, this kind of talk, is this taking away some level of tranquility from my mind? Do I feel like I'm leaking out some peacefulness? Leaking out. And if I am, okay, we need to stop this. Cough out, just get them out of your mouth, those shards of glass. No, you don't need to finish the sentence. So there's a lot of hatred, especially now in the world, especially, and we're carrying it into our heads. So much chatter. So if you can sit even for that, with that thought that, what, I'm just going to give my mind some peace. I don't care about any meditation technique. I don't care about anything. I just need to give my mind some peace. Thank you very much. Can we do that? That's huge if we can. Without any agendas. As if we're trying to tease out from the mind these sublime states. Yeah. If I play my cards right, yeah. No. Loving kindness is not a trick to kind of sugarcoat our way so that mommy or daddy or somebody could give us another cookie from the jar or the whole jar that's full of cookies that I read about. So we have all these crazy tricks. Let's give an ear. Just try to understand what's going on in the mind, our mind. And tranquility and sati or mindfulness, the more we do that, wisdom will come. Wisdom will come. Clear comprehension if we are practicing the precepts. Otherwise, your mindfulness, my mindfulness, and the dog's mindfulness are going to be the same. That's it. And there definitely will not come any. We're not going to get into any wise states. So that was an afterthought. Any questions, thoughts, comments, critiques? Yes, from the UK, I think. First.
Thank you,
Mm-hmm.
Bhante.
Yes.
The question first of all, thank you for that image of the glass in the mouth, because that's just brilliant. Because sometimes actually when you are about to say something negative about somebody else, for instance, or say maybe a harsh word, you think that, well, the momentum's going anyway, so I might as well just finish the sentence off. But just the visualization of wanting to get that out of your mouth as quick as possible to not say it, that was brilliant. So thank you. But I do wonder, like this, like the urgency to like live the noble life. Yeah, how is that balanced with like a wife that isn't like a Buddhist, and like maybe like watching like some like TV and things like that? Because there's a part of me that like drove myself almost crazy in the past trying to live like a monk, when I wasn't. And what's the balancing factor with that? How do you not go too far one way or the other without totally? I mean, the only way you could go too far in the noble sense is by becoming a monk, probably. That's something where my mind doesn't really find that much balance with.
Because as you pointed out, it won't be a balance at that point. It will be an extreme because you've gone to the other end of the pendulum. It's harder, in fact. It's easier to become the monk from removing yourself, extricating yourself from that situation, which requires some finesse, to say the least. Some navigating between human dynamics, relational dynamics, emotional understanding. It requires some EQ, the ability to read the other person. But the best way to do that, to my understanding, is first of all to remain calm in yourself, because oftentimes we think that we can be effective enough to kind of camouflage what we are feeling inside, meaning the tension, the aggravation that we're experiencing. We're somehow able to hide it from our partner or from this other human being sitting next to you. It never works. Because they, even if they can't interpret it correctly in their mind, like verbally, and they're, okay, why is this person, they will feel your energy. We all have this ability. If you have a functioning brain, you have this ability to read the other person's energy. Now, this is not some, new agey mumbo jumbo. This is the fact. You will feel it. Now, if you are sitting next to your partner and she or he is sitting there and they're watching something that you consider to be mundane, let's say, you would definitely not be able to sit through half an hour of that. What would you like to be done or said to you if you were them? And that was something that you were enjoying, let's say. Perhaps say something like, honey, can I go get you a glass of water? Or just without them asking, just bringing that and putting it next to them. And then sitting across or next to them and quietly. Maybe if you're really, really not interested, reading a book next to them. What you're giving them is basically, you're being generous, first of all, with your time, your life, your body, your heat, your relatedness, your kindness. They might be trying so hard to numb themselves. And if those 5, 10 minutes or 20 minutes or an hour that they need to just zone out, by you allowing them that space, that's such a, generous thing to do. And they will pick up on that. She will pick up on that. As long as you're not insisting on having her be swayed to see things your way, because that's manipulation. However, when you are sitting there next to her and you're just giving her that space, sooner or later she will respond to that. And when she's not getting that, she's going to miss that more so than the TV show, guaranteed. Because what she has next to her is a human being who's alive in this, on this planet right now, and they're sitting right next, and you're giving her love without saying a word. Wow. If that's not engaged, mindful, caring, loving presence, I don't know what is. Given the fact that this is functioning on the premise that it is the choice of the person or persons, two people, to be there, working from that premise, of course, and an understanding of this union. So if you weren't married, or if you were trying to try out things together, but you were unsure of being in a committed relationship, I might have given you a different response, perhaps. I'm not sure. But in this context, that's what I would feel more comfortable in relating to you as a possible answer.
Yeah. And it was really wonderful and like perfect advice actually
Um,
for my situation. So thank you. I appreciate that, Venerable.
Most welcome. Yes, from Los Angeles.
Is that
Oh,
me?
oh well, there was another person who raised his hand, but that's fine. Go ahead.
I just want to say, in response to Anthony's question, that I was married for 34 years. And I have to say, it was very hard to not to inhale the other person's mood, even if the person is not in a different room. If I know, when you know someone for a long time, if that person is tense, if that person is anxious, it's very hard to totally disconnect. Maybe because I'm a very empathetic person, so it affects my day. I mean, it makes me that day unhappy, even though he's not unhappy with me. He's just saying these things to himself and all that. And he said, "Why should you be upset?" So. But I have to say that the kind of successful marriages I have seen is that they can give each other a lot of space. So I think that would be, otherwise, if the person you are attached to feel that, oh, if you're not doing the same thing with me, doing my things, you don't love me. That is a very damaging relationship. So my own philosophy of life is that you can get married, but make sure the other person give you a lot of space. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And from psychotherapy and the world of therapy, I always, marriage and family therapy, in which I, studied the discipline and licensed in. Um, it's crucial for us to also read up on relationships and specifically attachment styles. Attachment styles. John Bowlby, a gentleman from the UK, was a major, like he established the attachment theory in such a powerful way, and I highly recommend looking into attachment styles. We each have our own attachment styles, whether it's secure, insecure, ambivalent, etc. And they carry themselves into the different relationships, not just romantic, sexual, whatever, social, but even at work. And children have their own attachment styles as well, obviously, because we start from somewhere, right? And it often is neglected to be considered. We just look at the appearance of the person, we go on dates, we put ourselves in different activities, social settings, this and that. Do our friends like them, etc.? All these things are completely tertiary, not even secondary in importance. The attachment style of the person, how they behave around you, what their expectations are, the silent ones especially, from you, from their union with you, is extremely important for the health or demise of the relationship. So reading up on it is always, you can look up on YouTube as well. There's tons and tons of videos. The Gottmans, I was just mentioning earlier to another person, John Gottman and I believe her name is Julie Gottman, husband and wife, a great team of, well, Dr. Gottman is amazing because he's helped identify the four horsemen, for example. That's a term he coined, meaning one of them, the worst one, is contempt. So he had this thing called, I think it was called Love Lab, Northern California, where couples would come into this makeshift kitchen house type of an environment, which is a lab, which had also so many cameras. And they knew they were getting into this so that they could work on their relationship, their marriage. And within 5 minutes or so of reviewing the tapes, Dr. Gottman would tell you with 94% accuracy, this was unprecedented, by the way, 94% accuracy, whether the couple was going to still remain together in 6 months or not. Meaning, divorce, separation, clear cut. And when he was asked by so many people, he just said, the moment we see the tiny little nuance on the face of one of the partners, this look that he coined it as contempt, that's the kiss of death. Meaning the person has been locking all that, suppressing all that tension inside. Oh, again? Again, you want me to do this again? Or, you know what, it's pointless for me to talk to you about this attitude. And they've just, sometimes people have called it stonewalling, this and that. When one person is not being understood or given the time of day, their space, as you pointed out, they're not being respected as a human being. They're asking, why am I in this place with this person who doesn't respect me, appreciate me, and everything else that is negative? And that's when we just have this sense of hopelessness in the person, and they show this gesture with the eyes, with the body language of contempt, and lo and behold, in less than 6 months, they're no longer together. Even though everything else seemed like it was okay, it was working out. So we need to look at relationships, not just within the context of mindfulness or meditation. There are other factors, because people bring in their own stories into relationships, into the practice, even if you're not in a relationship. And I see with students, I see a relationship going on. So I have to separate myself and see what's happening. What facets am I working with? And what do I need to work with? So my background as a teacher, but at the same time as a therapist also is crucial, because we need to ask each other questions, especially from ourselves. Hence the importance of journaling. Extremely important, because it reduces the tension, decreases the chances of getting to that contemptuous state. So I hope that helps. But there was a Jagat, I think you had your hand up earlier. Yes? Did you have a question?
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah.
Did you have a question?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Bante.
Mhm.
Thank you, Bante. This is a little off the subject, maybe. I was wondering, maybe it's just in America, but myself and other people, recently have been exposed to a lot of anti-Asian sentiment and attitudes, and I was trying to figure out exactly how compassionate I should be, or confront them, or walk away, or just suck it up, because, well, the COVID did come from Asia, so okay, I'm Asian, so maybe it's not really how would you say it? Maybe they're in the wrong, but they have the right to really for the argue with them, because they have very strong feelings about, about Asians nowadays. So it kind of puts me in a difficult situation. Should I be empathetic? Should I just say, like, F you or whatever it is? I just sometimes that not exactly sure what to do, whether the attitude is toward me or toward somebody next to me, or I see the situation happening.
Mm-hmm.
So in the Buddhist, how one should analyze it, or what one should do, actually.
You've asked questions along these lines, I think last time too. And first of all, it is a dreadful situation to be in one whatever way you look at it. And it's sad that human beings do this, and they do this quite often. And I've seen racism. Um, it's like a virus that I've seen in all the races that I've come across, and all the populations that I've intimated myself with, etc. But without taking anything from the significance of what it is you have been experiencing. You mentioned empathy. Should I be empathetic? My question would be, to whom? I would be more interested in having you develop that empathy towards yourself and the person next to you, who is completely, to my understanding, of course, uninvolved in all of this. And it's just a matter of what the media is putting out. And tomorrow they might say it's because of, I don't know, people from Zimbabwe, or people, the Aborigines, the poor people who've been wiped out almost and have no rights living in this land. Okay? But it's that ridiculous. Whatever is put out, all of a sudden you have this fold of crowds of people that just follow and eat whatever is given to them through social media. Meanwhile, actual human beings are hurting, and they have to carry that weight because it opens up old wounds. Something that many people do not realize is if and when trauma occurs to a population, it is transgenerational, meaning it can, I'm a survivor, of the genocide. My grandparents were, obviously, but research has shown that it will carry over up to the 7th generation. The trauma. The 7th generation, meaning that these kids might have lived in some beautiful farmland in up, the Alps in Switzerland somewhere, but they still feel this gaping hole, this pain, this trauma in them, and they have to go to see therapists generation after generation. So this is very much painful to see that this is happening with utter disregard of what it is doing to the human psyche, and which goes completely 180 degrees opposite of what we were talking about earlier, of developing that engaged attitude. So to give you something a little bit more tangible, what I found is to do the opposite of what is expected, because they're demonizing me. They're making me this non-human, basically, right? Who is the cause of all this fiasco. So what could I possibly do to completely throw them off their theory, their hypothesis? Not even a hypothesis, in fact, a belief, a blind belief. So if I am to be engaged in an action of humanity, for example, I was a witness to a beautiful event that happened today, where a woman had been stranded at a very busy corner in the UK, where I am at right now. And she had her emergency hazard lights on, and her tire was completely flat. It was actually coming off the rim. And she had called the assistance. Nobody was coming. No one was there. It was going to be at least another 2 hours. And the person I was with quickly pulled the car over, put his lights, hazard lights on, emergency lights, and got out and went without knowing who might be in the car, and reached out after communicating this and that. Now, long story short, we ended up taking this woman and obviously taking out the tire, going to the tire place and getting it fixed along with the lady with us, and coming back, putting it back together, and etc. Now, there were many races involved, to say the least, in this interaction of beautiful human interaction. I guarantee it, that out of those hundreds of cars that busily passed us by, at least one or few couple of eyes caught that human action that was being done, of generosity, of humanity. And I'm sure there might have also been some racists there looking at us. But that human interaction might, at least temporarily, shatter their own misconceptions, including racism, even if briefly. Um, so that would be what I would offer. Um, Again, it's all about you. What can you do to bring that sense of humanity in you? Obviously, you can't go and talk sense into this person. You can't. They're closed, and you can't fight with them, because that's just like throwing oil on fire. It's not going to work either. So who can you control? Your reactions. First, you need to understand them instead of shoving them down, acknowledging them, sitting down, journaling. Maybe in your case, because you're a creative person, painting your angst, your feeling, but at the same time, sitting down and asking questions. Okay, why is this person behaving like this? Da 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 da. And do they know me? They don't even know you. How could they judge you? They have no clue who you are, not even a tiny little iota about your life and what you had to live through in life. So why would their opinion even matter? But my feelings matter. Let me work on that. So that would be what I would point you in the direction of. Because that's something you have at least some control over, if not all of it. And smile.
Okay.
There it is. Any other
Thank
thoughts?
you.
Yeah, thank you, Bhante, for your talk. I was just going to offer as well to the anti-Asian racism. Try to imagine, when you're talking about empathy, sometimes I try to imagine just how much is this person suffering. If they're so whipped up into this frenzy of anger, they must be suffering a lot, right? And so kind of put myself in the same, not necessarily in their shoes, but try to remind myself that we're all suffering some more than others. And in this situation, this person is just going nuts. If a drunk person yells at me, I ignore it because they're drunk. Like, you can't bring reason to a situation that has no reason. So, and what has helped me sometimes, not all the times, is I try to ask, actually a monk told me this once. Instead of wondering like, why would people do that? Why do people do that? Ask yourself, when would I do something like that? When would I get so upset and so angry? Like, maybe not around COVID-19, but maybe there's something else that would get me all whipped up into a frenzy and angry enough to scream and yell at someone. And what would that be for me? Right? So instead of separating myself from that person and saying, oh my God, they're so terrible, I was just trying to realize, A, they're suffering, and B, I'm just like them. Maybe not around this issue, but there's something else that could make me act that way too. And what will that be? And just bring the lens onto myself as well. And as far as confronting people, I think that's a judgment call, on your safety and the situation and what's called for. If you're in an academic setting, it might be easier to call someone on it. If you're in a kind of bus, it's very different if you're in the street. But it's your own sense of safety and what you feel happy doing or not. That's my sense of, those are my 2 cents.
Thank you. Absolutely. And your safety is extremely important. Always need to be considered about, of that factor. But as, Mittapala was saying, it's important for you to look at the conditional aspect. That is the Buddhist viewpoint. You asked about, what would the Buddhist Dhamma be? Well, that's it. Conditioned. Like it was just mentioned, they're suffering. They're suffering. We don't know the conditions, the sets of conditions that have brought this person there. Now, you're not trying to excuse them. That's a totally different topic. but you're trying to understand what's happening so that you can dissipate the charges that are happening, the volcanic eruption that is about to happen within you. So you can look at things. By the way, I love that reference you made about you can't bring reason to a situation that doesn't have reason. But you can reason what's happening in your mind about this. Okay, what is my reaction? What is my attitude towards this situation? Without belittling what it is you're experiencing, though. Because I need you to also be true to your feelings without denying them, acknowledging them, but then at the same time, not being carried over with the heat of anger and ill will. And look at it in the form of sankhara. Sankharas in the sense that they are conditioned. These people are behaving because of several different conditions. Several conditions have brought you to be there at that time and space. Same with them. So this also is playing beautifully into what the Buddha called anatta, non-substantiality, because we have this firm conviction deep in our psyche, understanding of people, that you are you, I am me. You have your views and my views. So I have this very intrinsic, independent position than yours. Utter nonsense as far as the Dhamma is concerned. My view is very much influenced by yours. It's conditional. And that's what he meant by non-self. That's what we understand by anatta.
Okay, thank you.
It's about triage, folks. It's triage, and it's a French word. When you have first a situation where there's like a crisis, there's a burning situation, something happened, or an accident, a major catastrophe, the fire department and all these people come in, or the hospital, they do triage. They put individuals that fit the same type of injuries, let's say from severe to very light injuries, superficial injuries, each one in their own categories, so that they know who to go to first to help. So in the same way, we need to triage what's happening in us. So in those circumstances that are so, yes, it's personal, whether you like it or not, it gets heated, the body gets heated, your heart rate is rushing, and you are going on to the survival mode, fight or flight or freeze instinct kicks in, everything is going berserk. PFC doesn't work, prefrontal cortex doesn't work. Wow. Okay, so the first things first, I need to triage. Okay, the most severe thing. Okay, I need to first calm myself down. Watch the breath, observe the breath. Completely, sometimes you need to remove yourself physically, geographically from that location to do that. Look somewhere else. Extricate. Okay, and then your mind comes in and says, do you believe that person? He said this and that and this and that. How does he know what an Asian whatever? Was he in whatever, Wuhan? Are they absolutely positive? All these things are playing in the head. Okay, that's the second level, which means you're going to go back to the breath and come back and check in on the mind. And this is what the Buddha talked about, papanchas. Papanchas are this proliferation of thoughts where we chew on the memories from the past and we try to resuscitate the dead past by sacrificing the present. And that's why you have people who are still hurting, angry at others, simply because they're still perpetuating some hurt that happened to them eons ago, in childhood or something. As you see, you're pulling yourself from the heat of that experience and cooling yourself down, because ultimately, is my concern to beat him into submission, into making him see, oh, I'm so sorry, that was so racist of me. I should have not said that. Is that what I want? And is that even possible? Well, deep down emotionally, that's what I want. But is that possible? Now, in this encounter, at the end of this encounter, no, okay. What can I have control over? Great suggestions, by the way. Any other thoughts, concerns, suggestions? We're going through some rough times in the world. There's fear, there's uncertainty. Now more than ever, I see the need, the necessity, the indispensable need of calming ourselves down. So, and that's where the personal responsibility comes in. Don't rely on some other person, some entity to come in and save you, whether it's a person to be elected or not elected, or what is going to come out of the news agencies or not. What would be the news? Oh, 2020 is over. Yes. It's New Year's Eve, December 31st. The globe is dropping in New York City, whatever. And now we are going to go into happiness. We're going to end this 20. So we need to own up to our lives with kindness, with care. And that's a wholesome life, to my understanding. It's a way to live wisely, kindly. Because there, some might argue there isn't kindness in the world because there's emphasis on the negativity. But today I witnessed so many kind acts. Total strangers were hugging each other from interactions that I witnessed. And I was like, wow. Sometimes all it takes is you saying, your eyes look beautiful, to this total stranger. Sometimes that's all it takes to change their whole month. Because imagine, if somebody's negative remark is hurting you, a racist remark, can another person's remark, positive remark, really do the opposite? Engender the sense of, oh, every time you think about it? And can we do more of that? And when someone is not saying, those glasses you're wearing, the color, that's very nice. And if no one's saying that, can you look at them and say something that is coming from your heart, but have the initiative to say it? Because you kind of like it when someone says, that's a beautiful set of glasses you have. Okay, what can I give something like that to someone else and make their day? Okay, this person called me a racist or called me this, which was a racist remark. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and, conspire to do the opposite to someone else, or maybe to them, to really throw them in a spin. In one of the Dhamma talks some months ago, actually over a year ago, I think, I mentioned, I think that had happened like a couple of days prior to the Dhamma talk. I still remember this gentleman started wanting to make have a fight happen between him and I. And he wanted to get into a fist fight. And an older gentleman than I, and and he was big too. And I'm like, okay, this is not happening. And I'm noticing my heart rate and all that. And I hit the light for me to walk the crosswalk, and then he starts following me. He was waiting for his bus, by the way. He starts following me towards my car, and he's yelling and he's cursing at me. So I said, okay, what are my odds? What are my odds that I can walk away without anything? And if he throws a punch, what am I going to do? Self-defense? Hit him back? I'm a Dhamma teacher. I can defend myself. The Buddha didn't say, go ahead and get beat up. What do I do? Definitely the police will be involved either way. Okay, what can I do? I turned to him as I got to my car. I said, you know what? I'm going to get into my car and I'm going to drive away. And I will tell you this. I wish you an amazing, wonderful day. He just went like, you said what? I said, I wish you an amazing, wonderful day. He stuttered. He couldn't process what I was saying until it registered. And I was smiling to him. He stood right next to my car, and I thought that he might kick my car bumper or something. I got into my car and slowly drove away. Was it easy? No, because survival instinct kicks in, and all that, energy comes out. So I need to check in, triage. And I gave him something that he definitely was not looking, or expecting. I wished him a wonderful day. So, can we do that? Why shouldn't we be able to do that? Yeah. So it's a challenge of ourselves. This is another reason why I chose the word courage. You're being courageous against your own tendencies of blindly doing something that we have been so accustomed in doing. Oh yeah, eye for an eye, let's go for it. Well, okay, the whole world is going to end up being blind. That's stupid. That's ridiculous. That definitely is not a noble life. So you become an oasis of humanity when there is none. If that's not living responsibly, courageously, genuinely, humanly, I don't know what is. You become an embodiment of the Dhamma, a living Dhamma on two legs, walking in Los Angeles, bringing joy and cheer where there's none, when there's racism around you. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, because then you don't become their embodiment. Instead you create your own, because what you just told us reminds me, a couple of years ago, a young kid stopped me on the street with a baseball bat. I was just wearing shorts and a t-shirt. He says, give me your money. So I kind of like, okay, there's a baseball bat. This kid is pretty young, maybe 13. What's my chances? So I just looked at him like straight in the eye. I said, look, as you can see, I'm out exercising. I'm not carrying money, nothing on me. It's not going to really be that useful for you. I said, why don't you just wait right here? And I'm going to go back, see if I have any money. And I just told him to stop. I turned my back and started walking, not running. He didn't follow me. But it was kind of a judgment call, I guess, on my part. I mean, I was honest with him. But as you said, I think by by doing something else, you avoid becoming their embodiment, whether it's a stereotype, victim, or something. So hopefully, maybe it changes the dynamic. Guy, you wish them a happy day. It changes. You were no longer you weren't the victim. You weren't going to be his embodiment. You weren't going to be the victim.
Yeah.
So in that sense, you altered it, actually. I mean, luckily. So
Well,
anyway, thanks.
You're no longer an extra actor in someone else's story. Okay, why do you need to be a player of a role in someone else's story? Why can't we be the hero of our own story? Which you can sit down and write a script for. You choose what kind of a role you, the hero of your story, will play. But this requires tremendous sense of individual responsibility, of knowing what it is that you really want for yourself, what is making you really happy, truly happy. Without tranquility of mind, nothing is going to last. Everything is coming apart sooner or later. So that requires a sense of maturity. All this is just noise otherwise. All these things are just chisels that are trying to rub against us, kind of like filers, or like, they're trying to smooth the edges of roughness and becoming more virtuous in behavior. The Buddha used to criticize monks constantly. Sometimes people think that the majority of the monks were enlightened or they were higher beings. No. They weren't. Many of the critique from the Buddha is not going to the lay people. It's actually going towards other, monks who hide their inequities, their defilements under the robes, their roles, their status, their prestige, how many years of seniority, etc. they have, all that nonsense. Completely ignoring the fact that the question, where is my humanity? One of the most beautiful examples comes again from Venerable Sariputta. Venerable Sariputta, one time he was walking in the temple, in the monastery rather, and his robes by accident were touching the ground. And as a monk, you need to be very careful not to let your robes touch the ground. So another young, very young, I think it was like 6 years old or something like that in the books, it says, he turns to him and says, hey, doesn't even refer, this is the second in command of the Sangha in a sense. It was the second to the Buddha in wisdom. Second to the Buddha. He turns to him and says, hey, your robe is touching the ground. Be careful. And Venerable Sariputta doesn't look at his robe like, who do you think you're talking to? No, he immediately turns his attention onto himself. He quickly fixes his robes. And then, this is the kicker. He puts his hands in Anjali, prayer position, out of respect to this young 6-year-old boy, and says, thank you, teacher. Now, how many bhikkhus can do that today? I don't know. I really don't know. And that's an honest answer. So we need to be always thinking about how much humanity am I bringing to this human race? Am I disrespecting it? Am I an embarrassment to this race? Like characters who have been showing you disrespect and racism. And it's sad. But I'm going to change the tune. I am the hero of my story, right? So I'm going to bring in life where there isn't any. Can I do that? I think you can. Absolutely. We all can. Starting with your smile to yourself and forgiving yourself first. And then it's easier actually to forgive others. I've always noticed that it's the hardest part of forgiveness is forgiving oneself, which is amazing. So I know we went over, but these are very important matters that we're confronting on a global level. And I don't mind going over still if there's any pressing questions and thoughts you want to share. But apparently not. But I'm really glad with your questions and participation, comments, and real life examples here. Because people, when they're listening to these talks, that I want to put them out as soon as possible. I love it when I get people to tell me that they are finding the resonance because it speaks to them, because these are circumstances or things that they have been going through, whether it's meditation oriented directly or life issues. So I really appreciate your input and sharing. So and if you have any personal issues that you don't feel comfortable to share here in the group environment, you can email me, of course. And now we can just go ahead and do the sharing of merits. And I'll say it, and you can just listen or mute yourselves. May suffering ones be suffering free, and fear-struck ones be fearless. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find health relief. May all beings share in these merits that we have thus acquired, for the acquisition and achievement of all kinds of happiness and safety. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, share in these merits. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you, Bante.
Wonderful to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bhante.
Nice to see you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll
Nice to see everybody. Thank you.
see you next week. I think the same time, but I will. An email will go out to you in case. Make sure that we have your email, some contact in case there's a change in schedule. We can go ahead and let you be informed. Okay. Be well.
Be well.